I hope you're still recording this because that's a great point that you just made.
Welcome to the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Thanks so much for listening. I'm your host, Neil Horwitz. Hit me up on Twitter at NJH287. Also on LinkedIn, where you can find more content. The website, dsmsports.net. Also check out Slyke, SLYKE.co. And of course, follow along, subscribe on your preferred podcast platform. Guys, I got an all-timer of a show for you guys today. Just a tremendous interview. I've been following this guy for, feels like forever, honestly. And he delivered with this interview. So good. Stuff about strategy, about social media content, about user behavior, certainly about the business of the NBA. My guest on the podcast today is Worldwide Wob, Rob Perez. He has been all over your NBA Twitter for really over a decade now. He has a really impressive background. He has a method to his madness. He understands this stuff so well. He is currently working with SiriusXM with their NBA content, also doing stuff with SoRare NBA. As you'll hear, he always has lots of stuff going on because his services are in demand, because he knows how to engage audience. He knows how to create content. He knows how to develop audience. He has just crushed it on NBA Twitter for so many years. I was so privileged to be able to speak with him, and he crushed it. So, listen up. Here is Rob Perez, a.k.a. Worldwide Wob. Back on the show with today's guest, and I'm so psyched to be talking to him. We could have just been recording offline as well. Let's get into it, though. My guest on the podcast today is Rob Perez, a.k.a. Worldwide Wob. He is a host, a content creator, brand ambassador. You see him with SiriusXM and SoRare these days. He's been all over the place, though. If you follow the NBA, you definitely know this guest. So welcome to the podcast today, Rob.
You should include our conversation before. You should be recording it and have it as like a cold open,
True.
to your podcast. You ever considered that before, as opposed to like the formal welcome to the podcast? Because you usually get people's best conversations in the cold opens. That's why I've always, every show I've ever done, if I have creative control over it, you'll notice it's always a cold open before you get hit to the title. Some other content creator, I think Bomani's spoken about that, maybe Pablo too. They're like, we should do an entire cold open show. And that's what evolved into eventually their ESPN program, because you get the best combos from there. Just a quick side note, but yes, thank you for having me.
I've seen some. I think the Smartless guys do their little cold open, but that's not really with the guests, I guess. And some podcasts will do like a best of clip. So hopefully you'll give us a few best of clips, and maybe I can try some of those as well. But let's go into it, man. This is so much fun. Before we get into the meat of our discussion, Rob, tell us about you, your career path, your stops along the way, how you got into this crazy space that you're in and dominate. And any tips for folks that kind of want to try to become the next you.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would trace my career all the way back to my first job out of college was with an NBA team, but it's probably not what a lot of people thought. I was selling tickets for the New Orleans Hornets before they became the New Orleans Pelicans. So very, very long time ago. It was the peak of the recession. It was a couple of years after Katrina. So the city was just coming back. And the job was, here's a phone book, start calling. Yeah. And at the time, fortunate to have a job like that with benefits, because at recession, no one was hiring besides sales jobs. There's always a need for sales jobs. And I happened to find one that was in the NBA. It didn't pay all that well, but I'd never been to New Orleans in my life. I didn't know a single person down there besides one person I was working with. And it was cool, though. I mean, it was, to this day, it was the best group of people I've ever worked with. The job entailed taking clients to games and trying to upsell them on buying season ticket packages. You're selling corporate sponsorships, anything that could be sold to drive revenue for the business is your opportunity. Yeah. And I could certainly go on about that job forever, but just to keep a long story short, I eventually ended up leaving, starting my own ticket brokerage, because I saw how much ticket brokers were making on the other side that I was selling to. And I said, I could be good at that. And one of my big moments in my life was taking every dollar that I had saved from that New Orleans Hornets job and identifying a team to invest in, not from a gambling standpoint, but I wanted to find a team that I thought had a unique relationship with their fan base and potential to win an NBA championship. Mm-hmm. So in the end of 2010, I'm sitting there watching a pre-Christmas Day NBA game. And I said, if this team wins this game, I think they can win the championship. There was just something like divine that hit me that afternoon. And
Yeah.
that team was the Dallas Mavericks. And if you remember the Mavericks at the end of the 2000s, early 2010s, they were always the equivalent of the Indianapolis Colts with Peyton Manning. They would be number one in the conference and they would lose to the, we believe, Golden State Warriors.
Yeah.
And then they would like just always fall short. And their fans would, there was this assumption that they were going to be good during the regular season. We won't start caring until the playoffs. I'm like, this is the team. This is absolutely the team that's finally going to get there. And if they do, fans are going to turn out for it. So the way that NBA season tickets work is you can technically own a season ticket and reap all the benefits. At least this was the case back in 2010, that as long as there are more than 50% of home games still available or still need to be played,
Mhm.
it's considered a full season ticket. So 41 total home games in the NBA. If there's 22 remaining, it's a full season ticket. They called it an FS22. So
Yeah.
what I did is I got as many FS22s as I could afford for the Dallas Mavericks in the lower corner. I think the section was 110 row O. I'm making up a number, but I'm pretty sure it was either 110 or 107. I bought like 11 seats. And that's a pretty, decent chunk of change even
Oh
for
yeah.
half the season. So they end up making the playoffs. Of course they do. In the first round, they play the Portland Trailblazers, which I think was the Brandon Roy, maybe LaMarcus Aldridge team.
Mhm.
LaMarcus had just maybe, come to the NBA. Second round is against the Los Angeles Lakers. You can't pick a better opponent for
Oh
reset,
yeah.
right? Conference finals against Oklahoma City and Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, Harden, all these guys.
Mhm.
Amazing matchup. They get through that. And then the finals is against the Miami Heatles. So I couldn't have picked a better route in terms of like uh, driving desire for tickets and prices going up. And
Yeah.
ultimately they play the maximum amount of games that you can possibly play in the finals at home. It ended up being a windfall financially for me and putting me in a
Oh yeah.
position that, I could pursue some more entrepreneurial routes. So after that was over, I guess this whole podcast is just going to be my career story now. But after that was over, I ended up at the time in 2011, whether you were the richest person on the planet or the poorest person on the planet, somewhere in between, you used Groupon. Okay. This was, I know maybe younger listeners don't know what Groupon was. It was huge. Everyone was using
Oh
Groupon. It
yeah.
was just 30% off, 50% off, buy one, get one free. A website that made things very simple for very good deals. It didn't last for a variety of reasons. But what I ended up doing with that financial windfall was starting the Groupon for sports tickets with a business partner of mine that I still work with to this day. So the same way LinkedIn developed as the professional network for Facebook, uh, we called it Crowd Seats. Crowd Seats was going to be the sports ticket only of Groupon, and we built it. It was simple. We started in Los Angeles as our first market. $10, you're going to get a Los Angeles Dodgers ticket. And you're going to sit in one of these four sections. You don't know what row, what seat number. Just click here, enter your info, and the ticket's on its way. We wanted to make the buying process as simple as possible because we thought there was value in people not wanting to go through 1,000 steps to check out on Ticketmaster or StubHub. And there was. So
Oh
we
yeah.
ended up doing really well. We sold the company to a Ticketmaster subsidiary here in Los Angeles. And we ended up working as acqui-hire employees at said company
Mhm.
for a couple of years. Now that I'm back on a 9 to 5 schedule, being an entrepreneur for so long there, you start to realize like I have a lot of time in my day that I'm not spending working. So as a result, I started getting back into like religiously following the NBA. I already had religiously followed it, but creating content around it and is how the World Wide Web brand really expedited its evolution. Was I'd say in those years between 2012 and 2014 when I was sitting around the office all day doing office work, and then games would start.
Yeah.
And Tumblr was big back then. You still couldn't even put photos on Twitter, videos, anything like that.
Right.
And so began the days of me, live tweeting games, and I was giving out a lot of like daily fantasy and gambling picks as well to build that kind of audience, and was doing well with it. And over time, I just evolved with technology to get to the point that it's at today. And I think that's the story of how, when, who, what, when, where, and why the career developed into some content machine that I've been told it is.
So cool. I mean, I'm holding my tongue here because otherwise I will go down the rabbit holes of starting the business and the technology and yeah, and what it was like to do that and how you go about like getting groups of tickets. So, whether you're working with teams or not. We're gonna leave that aside other because we will geek out all day because I'm a sports business geek at heart ultimately. But you got into this content game. I mean, to your like as you said before, we were seeing endless highlights on Twitter. Before the words creator economy really meant anything. Before Taylor Lorenz was writing about creators all the time. And so
Mhm.
like, did you know that there was a career path at the end of the tunnel? Was it like, hey, maybe I'll get hired by an ESPN or a Bleacher Report or whatever in the future? Like what was kind of the mindset of, okay, I'm gonna start creating content because it's fun, because if I create value, I can get some value back. Like, what was the mindset there?
Yeah, I mean, I did it because it was fun. I was passionate about it because I love the NBA. I never, for years, even thought about turning it into a profession. I was just interested in sharing my opinion because of the technology that had been made available to me with Twitter. At the time, those years, 2012 to 2014, was just an outlet for me to burn time at work. I mean,
Hmm.
I mean, I was doing my job. It wasn't like I wasn't doing my job.
Right,
I
right.
would just, be done with certain things. And then I'm watching a game and I want to talk to someone about it. And that was the easiest way to go about it. So eventually, I say when we got to like 2015, 2016, and I was starting to build an audience, then you start to realize, maybe I could like start profiting and monetizing this. But that really didn't come. I've spoken to evolving with technology, and I always, if I'm giving out advice and or explanations for what World Wide Web has become today, that's always reason number one. And what I mean by evolving with technology was 2014-ish maybe is when Vine became a thing on Twitter, RIP Vine, but that allowed you to start illustrating videos and putting them directly into your Twitter timeline. There are some stars who used Vine, like the Logan Pauls of the world, to
Right.
do 6-second creative videos that had nothing to do with sports and become these mega YouTube stars because of their creativity and in vlogging, and it was just something that had never been seen on the internet. So I used Vine to create 6-second clips of like NBA highlights, and everyone's can identify what a big poster dunk is or a game-winning shot, but I was always adamant that I was able to see the game through a different lens. And now all these things I was talking about, I had now a vehicle to show you
Yeah.
and illustrate it. And that really poured gas on the fire in terms of making me a unique voice, because it's one thing to read about it and I'm like, oh, I'll trust them. I'm sure it happened. And then it's another to attach video with it as evidence and proof. And it's funny you brought that up as a question, because it was just the other day was the 10-year anniversary of a Wall Street Journal article that they wrote about me. So it's 2014
Mhm.
and Vine is just like being released, and the Wall Street Journal is like, here, this sport, and they're referring to the NBA, and Kobe Bryant was doing his rings counting, I think, when he
Yeah.
did the five, that Vine went viral. And they're like, you would now have an ability to share your favorite sports highlights clips on the internet, and here's someone who's doing it. And I spoke with them about the potential of this.
Oh,
It's 2024 now, and we just take it all
right.
for granted, all this technology. But at the time, it was absolutely like this brand new, I found gold discovery.
Yeah.
And it took years and years and years. Of course, there's other accounts that, figure it out and start doing it themselves. Omar at House of Highlights was another good success story that caught on early. But just a very simple way of creating content, if you're first to market and you stay ahead of the technology, has always been my answer. And I can give you multiple examples of that, because after Vine, then came an app called Meerkat.
Yep.
Meerkat and Periscope dropped, within weeks of each other, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
2015-ish. All right. And now, once again, we're in 2024. We could roll out of bed, click one button, and go live to the world on pretty much any social media platform in the world: Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, you name it. 2015, That was a completely insane concept. They didn't come out with YouTube Live, if I'm not mistaken, until the end of the 2010s.
Yeah.
So this app Meerkat that I downloaded and Periscope allowed me to go live to the world. So all of these things that I was tweeting about during games and after, and I was in a way creating an online post-game show with tweets. Now I could put my face, and engage with people in real time,
Yeah.
a live sports center, if you will. Again, 2015, a completely unique and novel concept. Sports talk radio is nothing new, but the ability to put it on the internet and attach your face to it, engage with a comment section of people who don't have to wait on a phone line, a sports talk radio for an hour to just get one question off.
Right.
This was reinventing the wheel, but this wheel was a lot better. So I really went all in. My first ever live show was me cooking pizza rolls after I came home from the bar at like 3 a.m. with my roommate, and there were 50, 100 people who watched. And I'm like, that's a pretty good number, honestly,
Yeah.
for a brand new technology. I'm like, what if I actually did this at a normal hour, something of substance, and talked about hoops and stuff like that? And it went from 50, 100 to 500. And over time, in those years of Periscope being a brand new thing, and especially integrated directly to Twitter,
Mhm.
that it allowed me to build this online community of NBA fans who wanted to talk about the game after they ended. And I know I may sound like I'm rambling here, but I promise there's a method to my madness. And I spoke about always the evolution, staying in front of the evolution of technology. But for me too, what I recognized early was just how international of a sport the NBA is. And now in 2024, 2025, I would say it's the second most popular sport worldwide behind just football, not American football, but
Right.
soccer,
Right.
like Premier League, Champions League.
Mhm.
You travel Europe, you travel Asia, there are NBA jerseys being worn on every street corner. And they can tell you one NFL player. NFL is huge in the United States, but internationally, there was a massive, massive audience for the NBA.
Oh
And
yeah.
because the NBA is a very late sport, Neil, meaning it ends during the regular season between 1 and 1:15 in the morning, East Coast time on a Tuesday. That's when the Lakers, the Warriors, the Suns, all these teams with the big stars, that's when it ends. That's when the discourse should begin, not the next morning when everyone's had the opportunity to sleep and they calm down. I wanted to capture the emotion of the moment. So by doing these late night shows, I would get West Coast NBA fans, I would get insomnia East Coast fans, but more importantly, I was building an audience internationally as well. So I was seeing the demographics of where these people were watching from. It could be the Philippines, it could be Australia, where it was like lunchtime the next day. And I was just building this community of people that found the only place that you can get post-game stuff for years was on my Periscope.
Yeah.
Sports Center sometimes wasn't even live, and they were just showing reruns and highlights. There was no post-game NBA show. And for years, I thrived off being the one guy that you could go to for that type of content. Now it's completely saturated in 2024, but I guess new followers are always wondering, like, what does this guy even do? What's different? Like, how did he build an audience? Like, you weren't here 10 years ago when it was like a sole proprietorship,
Right.
this entire concept. I was getting away with it for years before people realized and capitalized on the market opportunity. So I would attribute that, of course, to all of my success. And identifying live audio as well is probably the last thing, which is an evolution from Periscope. But during COVID, remember when Clubhouse became a big deal?
Totally.
A lot of other major companies were trying to replicate Clubhouse because people were willing to sit in chat rooms and talk. And I ended up getting a big deal with Amazon to push their product, which was called AMP. So it was live sports talk radio on the internet. Still, nothing really all that different than I was doing before. But just identifying these different technologies at first, being the first to market, will afford you opportunities which you didn't even think were possible.
Yeah, just great themes there around to your point, recognizing technologies, being an early mover, and being an early mover, I guess, ultimately helps you to establish that brand, establish that parasocial relationship, or even direct social relationship, so that when it did become more saturated, people had that relationship with you because they had been with you for multiple years. I mean, I remember, finding you in those early years as well because it was after a late game, and I was like, man, this guy doesn't take a night off. He's always off.
No,
It's like, I wasn't sure if you're East Coast or West Coast, but it was late for me no matter what on the West Coast. And just you were always there to be there for NBA fans. And I think that's a true testament and why you're able to
you can
reach.
speak to the market size. That's the tradition in those 2010s was you would go to bed, you would wake up, you would turn on a sports network, whether it's ESPN or FS1, and you would watch the sports talk shows or sports talk radio if you were commuting to the car, maybe a podcast or two, but those wouldn't drop until the following morning. So people that have grown accustomed to that lifestyle and that familiarity with consuming sports that way, this was an option for someone that had just witnessed a Steph Curry game winner in the mid 2010s.
Yeah.
Like, I gotta talk with somebody about this. Why is everyone sleeping? And you would be stunned how many people were sleeping through creating a community and a lightning rod opportunity for their fan base to discuss the emotion of the moment. And capturing that emotion only lasts an hour or two. As
Yeah.
soon as that second hour passes by, that window is closed and you have to pivot more to, all right, let's talk about last night. And you go back to that more traditional crowd. And again, 2024, it seems like everyone is doing it. And I've taken my foot off the gas in that regard a little bit just because of the saturation of the market. But yeah, especially new followers now, they're like, we don't know what he does, or it's always a struggle for me to continue to re-educate followers and people that are just joining social media for the first time, and a younger audience that have no clue nor no care about your entire history and what you've
Yeah.
done in 10 years. They just started following you yesterday, and to get those people through the door and retain them is a massive undertaking of effort, struggle, and or I don't even know what the appropriate term is, but you have to create content which appeals to your long-term base as well as someone who has no clue who you are, which is a massive, massive over not overstated or overthought, but it flies under the radar
Yeah.
for content creators who think they're just always going to keep doing the same things because my fan base has been here since day one. No, you're going to get new people all the time.
Yeah, and you see it now a bit like when someone goes viral on TikTok, it's like, okay, you got a million people to see you on one night, and now what
No
are you
one.
gonna do next week, the week after that, the month after that? But let's back up a little bit and talk about kind of how you developed worldwide WOB. Kind of, I don't know, like I want to hear how you kind of define is there Rob Perez and worldwide WOB? Is it one and the same? And how do you define that brand? And like, how intentional were you on like this is how I want to portray? This is what people are going to come to me for this kind of perspective, this kind of POV. I'm not going to be a hard news guy necessarily. I'm not going to be like an X and O's guy maybe at times. Like, how did you kind of develop that voice, that brand, and how has it evolved over the years?
I'd say for the years between 2009 and 2019, those 10 years, Worldwide Wob and Rob Perez were the same exact person. I didn't have Instagram. I didn't post anywhere else. Everything in my life was on Twitter, whether it was talking about the NBA, the actual NBA content, like the official formal stuff. And then I would like just overshare of like how I was feeling that day or something that,
Yeah.
hit my mind. So you could get the full WOB experience on Twitter. Now, fast forward 5 years, I'd say 2019 when COVID started, I'd say the account has shifted more to Worldwide WOB just being like an NBA brand.
Yeah.
And Rob Perez doesn't nearly tweet as much. I have burner accounts for that. And I honestly just don't care enough anymore to share my personal thoughts with the public. Maybe in your 20s, you care more about what people think and stuff. But with age, apathy has become my superpower. So with that said, Worldwide WOB is definitely NBA 90% of the time if it's not for police chases and stuff. But
Mhm.
that's also due to the size of the account. I just spoke to all these new people that are following, and they're likely following because of NBA related stuff, and then they see like what I'm eating rotisserie chicken or dropping a burrito or something, and they're like, "What the hell is this?" You start learning about your audience demographics and what they're there for, and it kind of just evolved over time that I just kind of pivoted the account mainly to be NBA stuff only. And if they want to find if they want the other stuff, it's out there. You can find it if you look hard enough. But when the account crossed like 1 million followers and stuff, it was diminishing returns doing, and especially with the way Twitter has evolved as well.
Yeah.
People just don't use it anymore to overshare and just kind of following what people want and don't want.
There's something to that as well, though. I think the fact that if we see a burrito drop video, there is a handful of people that will like look at each other, smile at each other, be like, "Hey, we're in the in crowd. Like we know what that means," and that is like you can call them whatever, a super fan or a diehard or worldwide Wob fan. Whereas someone who just stumbles upon you because one of your tweets goes viral or they see a basketball clip or whatever, that's a different type of fan, and so you almost have to like balance, I guess, serving those super fans that are the avids that are going to follow you wherever you go, Amazon to Sirius to wherever it might be, and while also still attracting, I guess, that casual fan. So, like, how intentional are you with that strategy of here's who I'm trying to attract, here's who I need to retain, or is it just one and the same? Like, ultimately, you're going to do what you're going to do, and the chips are going to fall where they may, and you know that there's going to be some group of fans there no matter what.
Yeah, I'm cognizant usually of all of those things. And when my account, when I would consider it to be when it was in growth mode, I was always trying to optimize what the majority of the audience wanted. And the reason for that is because when you're starting to profit from your account and get opportunities, of course, you're trying to reach your ceiling. And I would say I probably reached my ceiling on that specific platform. So now the content I create, honestly, is just whatever comes off the fingertips. It's more of, I'm not old man yells at cloud, even though I'm getting close, but I have a lot less care and thought that goes into some of these tweets if it's not like a project that I've worked really hard on and it's like a highly produced monologue or a season recap or something. Like these tweets are all just kind of off the cuff, and I've in a way reverted back to the original form of Wob, which was just the guy who was live tweeting games and sitting around and shooting the shit, as opposed to the presentation of everything needs to be like anything that I tweeted for 5 years between 2015 and 2020. Those 5 years, nothing was ever published unless it was reviewed 10 times. And
Wow.
I thought about it and I'm like, who does this appeal to? Who will it not? Who will it piss off? For many years, I was always cognizant and thinking about that. I can't say I do that anymore. Now that I'm not that I'm tweeting like malicious things, but I'm just much more off the cuff at this point in my senior PGA career.
Yeah. I mean, and what have you found that has worked, and how has that changed, like the way that NBA Twitter interacts, or even like the growth of these other industries? As you were kind of early on in the fantasy and gambling niche, and now there's no shortage of people that are talking about that kind of stuff. So I guess
Yeah.
from a content perspective, like what has become more interesting to you as well as to your audience, and even just the way that stuff is packaged. Like highlights are a dime a dozen now. You see millions of highlights, and it's almost a caption contest for who can have the best copy to go with this clip.
Right.
So like how has it changed the way that you are putting content out and looking at what's actually performing, for lack of a better way to put it?
So on the gambling fantasy stuff, that I was just so early with it, I can't ever, like, the stuff that I see now is so bad, and I want to be like, you're so stupid. I want to like tweet it so badly, but I don't, for a variety of reasons. The first of which is it makes me look hypocritical as someone that has absolutely profited off of
Yeah.
working and partnering with fantasy and gambling companies for many years. I can't ever speak to the ethics of like problem gambling, because I have promoted those companies and encouraged them to sign up and join. I'm proud of how I've always said doing it within your means in the
Yeah.
same way that you wouldn't go out and overspend any other. You got to treat this the same way, you treat anything else in life. And giving out like picks and stuff like that has always been free. And I never think you have to pay for these. I have all of these opinions on the industry and what it's evolved into because there's just so much money and so many people like, not just on Twitter, but promoting and touting and doing all of these things. I'm just, oh my God, these poor souls that get this type of content integrated into their timelines when they either didn't ask it and or they don't know any better. Like
Right.
most of it is so bad, and it's only going to cost them money. So that's why I certainly just stay quiet on all that stuff. And the second part of your question was about highlights and captions and that
Yeah.
that side of things as well. So
Yeah.
now, yeah, of course, now there's a million accounts out there that are doing highlights and stuff. But yeah, there's little one. I laugh because one of the things I'll never change is how I bootleg my NBA videos with my phone, and it drives people mad
I've
because
always
there's
wanted
so
to know
much.
that. I
Yeah,
just
well,
that, but
there's
yeah.
there's so many. I do it on purpose because it drives engagement, and it's a brand at this point. If you see a bootleg NBA video, you know exactly where it came from.
Yeah.
So I don't even need to watermark it. Everyone knows it's a WOB video now. So that's one reason. Number two is there's so many like accounts out there, and you can screen capture so easily that anyone can put something on the internet in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Now, I think I'm pretty sure my proprietary way of thinking, even to this day, but it certainly got me through the end of the 2010s and differentiated me from any other highlight account out there. But here's a good example, like NBA just recently added mobile view to the drop down bar of ways that you can watch an NBA game. Now,
Right.
there was always mobile view availability in the app and on the website. You just had to click around and know where to find it. But what mobile view is, for those of you listening and don't know, is a zoomed in camera on the action. And when I say zoomed in, it's not like you're taking your phone and putting it closer to the television. It's in HD. They're zoomed in usually on
Yeah.
like a player. And in the event, let's say that there's an ankle breaker or a massive dunk or some moment, the mobile view offers a much more defined lens than your standard broadcasting view.
Mhm.
So when these other accounts are like, look at this pick and roll happening in the very top left corner of the broadcast screen, and like some major event happened, the mobile view is zoomed in all the way on it. And I was always showing mobile view stuff while all these other networks were always giving you where is it? Every time that I would pull up the account or the timeline, I would have to like squint and put the phone to my face. And it
Yeah.
was in that moment, I think in the mid 2010s, where I realized like they don't know that how bad they're messing up. And what I mean by that is uh, I figured out pretty early, like people were going to start using their phones and their phones only to use social media,
Yeah.
right? The days of desktop and browsers, like the market share for consumption has steadily declined over time.
Mhm.
And if people are using their phones for highlights, getting them to click on it, maximize it, and then rotate their
Yeah.
phones from portrait to landscape or whichever way is the horizontal way, uh, not many people are going to do that. So whatever you put out into social media better be viewable and identifiable by just scrolling a timeline on Twitter. In that video, I would say takes up 30% of a smartphone screen.
Mhm.
So it better show what you are captioning and talking about very obviously.
Yeah.
And every other account in the world never did that. It was always the broadcast view, and you would have to like watch it 10 times before you realized what was going on. And I had this competitive advantage of which I never even mentioned publicly or shared with because I'm like, I can see like there's no engagement there because no one knows what the comments are like. What are you talking about? Oh,
Yeah.
and then people are trying to identify in the comments. Most people aren't reading the comments and they're just scrolling right past your
Totally.
tweet. So if you are the one getting the way that the algorithm worked on Twitter early on, if you were getting the first engagement and it was quick, like your tweet would always be the one featured. And there was definitely a strategy involved to the way that I was cutting the vines as well.
Mhm.
Zooming in on them and uh, using those 6 seconds that you could put on the internet were not to take the video out of context, but I would sometimes take an extra 5 to 10 seconds to make sure the video that I was putting out there made it very easy to digest everything at once. And the way that I was just doing on the fly editing and or jokes and or captions and stuff like that is what separated me from the rest of the field
Yeah.
because you knew whenever you came to the World Wide Web timeline in that decade that I was always going to look at the obvious play that just occurred. I was going to give you a different angle of it.
Yeah.
And that was always the goal of my account because I was never going to compete with the already established networks and minds that had built their reputations with NBA audiences. I needed to find a different way in. And by doing a social media strategy of highlights, which again is so simple now, in the way that I did, is certainly what differentiated me from the crowd.
Yeah. And I wasn't going to go down this rabbit hole, but like, do you like you've been ahead of the curve multiple times. I mean, we just talked about it with the mobile viewing, mobile optimization of things. How do you go about is it just a lot of social media consumption over decade or decade plus that you just kind of have started to internalize these behaviorals and behavioral changes, looking at platforms? Like, how do you go about kind of it's almost like a science and looking at what is user behavior like, what is these interfaces looking at? Like, how do you go about learning? Are you on the other platforms looking at what is this emerging behavior? How do I adopt this to what I'm doing in the NBA side? Like, is it just instinct or is it a little bit of study or a little bit of taking notes, mental notes here and there? Like, how do you go about kind of trying to be ahead of the curve so often?
Well, I'll go back to my answer about the beginning of my career was starting the crowd seats company was the reason for doing it was creating simplicity. And when you create simplicity, you can you can attract a lot more people to your storefront or at least to walk by.
Hmm.
So my strategy to answer your question was always uh, get this in front of many people as possible. And if I can get one out of those 10 passerbys to come into the store, maybe I can sell them on the more proprietary stuff that I am creating and like more what I'm about.
Yeah.
But if you're just scrolling on the timeline and you're how many people like on your For You page, like, oh, that's a funny tweet, or like that was interesting. But how many of those do you stop, click their profile, follow, and scroll to see like what they do on a full-time basis? I would say that percentage is very, very low.
Right.
So what I was trying to do was create a wide funnel with these highlights back in the day to like, I keep seeing this guy pop up on my timeline, and then you see, wait, oh, he does other stuff other than the NBA, or he's doing more than just highlights. And slowly over time, I would say 1 out of 10 of people that either retweeted, liked, and or followed the account stuck around. And if I could have that 10% retention percentage and convert another 50% of those 10% into super fans, like that's an insane number of which I would
Yeah.
still kill for to this day. If you're getting 5 out of 100 people to be super fans, that's ludicrous, right? Only like Mr. Beast and guys have that type
Totally.
of retention percentage. So at the time, for many years, the strategy was always give them an easy way to try and learn more, and then be prepared for when that person did come in the store that you want to be ready to sell them. So I was always prepared. I was writing articles. I was cutting videos, producing monologues, every single day. And anyone that came to the timeline at any given point, I would always make sure that there was something more like creative and or proprietary to my own brand
Yeah.
than just like here was the dunk of the night. Otherwise you would just be a highlight channel. And
Totally.
you're not profiting. No one's profiting off of just tweeting highlights. You can build an audience and get subscribers, but those people will never be uh, content creators that are paying their bills because they don't own the rights to license and profit off of that content.
Yeah.
So that's not a slight to them, but you have to eventually find a way to get people to stick around as a community for you and not just the highlights and stuff. So that was always my mindset of creating a business around like posting highlights to Twitter. Because I imagine 9 out of 10 people that you ask, what do you think Worldwide Wob does on the internet? They're going to say like, oh, the NBA highlight guy, and I don't blame them
Right.
because I mean, that's certainly what I did a lot of. But the one, as long as there's 1 out of 10 that are able to give a much more detailed and answer about all these various programs that I've worked with networks on and stuff like that. That's all I ask for, and that's what I was able to accomplish.
Yeah, let's talk briefly. A few minutes up here with Worldwide Rob. I can keep you all the way till the NBA season starts, but I promise I won't keep you too long. But let's talk a little about the business of being a creator. I mean, if you were becoming Worldwide Rob today, it might be different. And you've worked for a lot of companies over the years. Now, like you look at, maybe I have a Patreon, maybe I have a paid Discord channel or a paid Slack channel or some other paid community, or maybe I make my own products. Or there's so many different ways to monetize once you have that audience, a newsletter, whatever it may be, a YouTube channel. Like, how did you think about early on, I guess, like monetizing this growing community and like the various ways that you maybe have explored or thought about over the years of monetizing your brand? Maybe you bring on other people to work for you or with you, and like what's kind of colored those discussions in your head internally and color the decisions that you made?
Yeah, that's probably the reason why I'm so washed now is because there's just every single person wants to be a content creator. Like you ask kids in middle school and high school, like, do you want to be an astronaut? You want to be a fireman? No, I want to be a YouTuber.
Right.
And I mean, God bless them, they're kids and they don't know any better, but that's just the world is so saturated with social media creators that there's so many more different avenues, which is a blessing and a curse because you can profit off of all of these different platforms, even X to an extent now. That yes, you could certainly profit a lot more now than you could then. But as a result of that, you have the saturation and you have splintered, the saturation causes splintered audiences.
Yeah.
Because back in the 2010s, I'm going to keep doing this back in my day thing because that's all I can really speak to. But it was really just Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook for almost a decade there.
Right.
So everyone's content, everyone knew what the home base was, and then YouTube exploded, really at the end of the 2010s. But for a while there, everyone's content's home base could be found on the same platform. Now you have Reddit, you have Discord, and the way that society is evolving into a much more tribal mindset, both with sports as well as things in real life. I mean, shit, we see it with politics and how extreme things get. That people are always looking for like-minded support and echo chambers, and as a result, they're going to go the places where they can find that. And because there's so many options, that it's very rare for someone, I would say, nowadays to succeed by just going all in on one platform. That would be the last thing I would ever suggest. Because even with YouTube exploding right now, and very clearly the number one audience size, easiest way to profit, easiest way to make a career of things, people are just piling into YouTube. Well, I hate to tell this to you, but they did the same for Twitter for many, 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 many years.
Yeah.
No one would even take your call until they looked at your Twitter account. No one would sign a check until they looked at your Twitter account and they saw the engagement and the things you were talking about. And now that's the case, but for YouTube. I promise the day will come that people start leaving YouTube to go to some brand new platform that's paying more, the same way that Kick is trying to usurp Twitch and all of these things. So no, do not go all in. Be a Swiss Army knife, meaning put your content everywhere, create these communities, because the day that Twitter just becomes MySpace, like me, my presence, my influence is going to decrease tenfold compared to anyone else because I've been all in on Twitter for so long. It was a great bet for a really long time, but it's not anymore. So diversifying yourself to these different platforms and having an audience on all of them in the event you need to pivot and move them there is essential. The Swiss Army knife concept also applies to content creation. So you need to be able to be on camera. You need to be able to do audio with podcasts. You need to be able to edit your own stuff, produce your own stuff. You need to know how to write. Learn how to write first, because when you're writing your own scripts, it makes life so much easier when you're able to write out things. If you don't feel comfortable on camera and you write them out first, I promise you that exercise, everything else will fall into place. I learned how to write first, and from there, it worked wonders for me. But I came up in the blogging days when everyone was still reading and clicking websites and stuff. That's not the case anymore.
Right.
But even if you're just doing YouTube stuff, you're gonna have to write out scripts and be on teleprompters and stuff at some point. So learn how to write, learn how to write, learn how to write, even if you don't have a Substack. And I guess that's my final piece of advice and or experience is everyone has these aspirations to create like a huge network brand in that they want to become the next, I don't know, insert popular pop culture site here that became famous in the 2010s and or may have sold, may have not, and then they came into this huge avalanche of money because they IPO'd or they found a partner to acquire them. I have always been the opposite. I've been a bootstrapper in every business that I've been in. And what I mean by bootstrapping is you're paying for everything out of pocket. You're doing for everything out of pocket.
Yeah.
A sole proprietorship, a pirate ship. Like I'm a one-man show with everything that I have ever done, with the exception of the programs that I participated in with major networks, like in partnership with ESPN. Like I wasn't doing everything myself. Obviously, we had a producer, we had directors, we had all that stuff. But for the most part, the shows that I've created the IP for have always been, I've done all those things that I just talked about, the producing, the editing, the talent, and a lot of that work has to be put in while others are sleeping and or they don't recognize the amount of time it takes to produce a monologue. All they see is the finished product.
Right.
So there's an expectation that you're going to be putting out all of this content in terms of quality and quantity. And if you're bootstrapping, you better be prepared for that grind. I think you alluded to it before, but if you have one viral tweet and you've got people's attention, how do you keep them in the store? And the answer is usually volume and quantity and quality. And that takes a lifestyle that you have to be willing to commit to, because there's always going to be someone who's doing more on the quantity side.
Yeah.
So I guess the way of putting a bow on this point is I personally would never recommend and or have aspirations for creating a brand, hiring like 30 people and other talent to like be a part of this brand, because I know what that entails. Eventually, you're gonna have to take on some funding.
Right.
You're gonna have to forego a lot of your own salary in hope that your stock is worth something someday. And now that gambling money is starting to dry up a little bit in terms of them spraying it everywhere for user acquisition at all costs. They're focusing more on just the A-listers now at this point. Those big buyout deals from gambling companies for media companies, because they have reach, instant reach, I predict that will not be the case. Those deals will not be nearly as popular a couple years down the road as they were back in 2020 and 2021. So then if gambling, like if you're not getting acquired by gambling companies, who's the one that's going to be buying your share price
Yeah.
at
What's the right
25
thing?
bucks a pop for you to get a 10x multiple? Who's out there? I don't know the answer to that question. You're going to have to IPO, and good luck with an IPO market that is completely barren and in a bear market itself for many, many years, despite the S&P being at an all-time high.
Yeah.
Like good luck IPOing, finding anyone to support that. You have to be a gargantuan 1 in 10,000 company to even get considered, because they're all worried about you being the next BuzzFeed. So good luck on that. And just go the sole proprietor route, pocket all of the money that you make from sponsorships and partnerships. You put that right into your bank account, and or you can invest in yourself, not necessarily in a network brand, but you can invest in a personal brand. Absolutely. I would recommend that.
Yeah.
So that's my mentality, and my recommendation is if you're good and you're an aspiring content creator, stay the solopreneur route. There are so many benefits to it. Your ceiling may be a little bit lower, but your floor is a lot higher.
Yeah, the risk is a lot lower. Everyone wants to be, Pat McAfee, I guess, and get that fat check from ESPN, or not everyone's
Well,
going to be.
dude, Pat McAfee, though, if you're going to use him as an example, he has the luxury of having tens of millions of dollars in the bank in case it didn't work out. And most content
Totally.
creators that are straight out of college and are still living at home do not have a let's invest in this giant studio. I'm going to hire all my friends, get
Right.
these awesome looking cameras, and see if this works. Because there's a chance it may not have worked. And if it didn't work, he'd still be rich regardless. Some
Yeah.
people can't afford to take that risk. So God bless Pat McAfee. It all worked out great for him. And I'm only, if it sounds like I'm speaking negatively about him, I'm more just, it's more just a warning
Yeah.
that you can't replicate. Use Pat McAfee as an example, because when you have the financial safety net that he did, it makes taking the risk that he did to become successful a lot more advantageous and or less detrimental when you can afford it.
Yeah. I feel like in many ways you've almost been like writing your own obituary, your own epilogue here as a creator. And I want to just touch briefly on like that, the idea of like the ownership of audience of when there was a moment there when we were all writing our last tweets, or so we thought, that Twitter was going away forever. Like, and oh
Um,
right, you would have, like, yes, it's not as important to you these days as it once was. But still over 1 million followers that would vanish. And we were starting to see more and more, I think athletes, you're starting to see them get like, subscribe to my newsletter or join this community or whatever it might be. How do you think about audience these days? And, is the follower diminishing in value? I think my guess is yes. And if so, like, what does it make you think about, like, how you can own, the importance of owning an audience, having access to them that is platform agnostic, so that if TikTok goes away tomorrow, if Twitter goes away tomorrow, that you're not showing SOL.
Inflation has hit subscriber counts harder than it has the US dollar. So what I mean by that is 1 million followers on Twitter in 2015 was worth 3 to 5 times as much as it is now.
Totally.
And the inflation isn't just Twitter specific. It's because TikTok became a thing, because YouTube is now has eaten up so much market share that having 1 million followers on one platform is great. But what are you doing in the event that one of these social media networks folds? What are you doing if one of these other places takes off? Are these followers following you because you cooked the books on an algorithm, or are they following you because you have built a community? Now, for me, fortunately, I can absolutely attest to the latter, because I've taken more than a decade plus, almost 2 decades at this point, to build community. But there are plenty of accounts out there that know how to get content in front of you through YouTube Shorts, get 10 million subscribers almost instantly because they figured out growth hacks through these various networks. And you better hope that they stick around in the event that platform falls through, and or you have enough people there that that partners and or potential vice presidents who are hiring you to do a show for them, that they're able to identify that those are like real viewers and not algorithm viewers, as I like to call it. Because Lord knows how many accounts out there have just kind of figured out social media, and they've assembled these audiences, but they have little engagement. You can tell that it's more of just like a brand as opposed to a community. And a lot of executives, I still, even to this day, can't identify the difference, but I most certainly can. And some sharp executives can as well. And I think that's why I certainly get a lot of opportunity in the event there's a bigger account out there, and or a network potentially that would drive more eyeballs. They know through my experience and all of the content that I've created over these decades that this guy, no matter where he goes, that audience will come with him.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a time, I would say, in those same 10 years I keep referring back to, everyone's aspirations coming out of college still would be to work for an ESPN, to work for a Fox Sports, because that's what you grow up watching, and the network, and you get to be an on-camera talent. But what they don't realize is that the day that many of those talents either get laid off or leave ESPN and have to go somewhere else, audience does not follow them. Okay. And as a result, their value, both financially and business wise, I think creators, and that has very quickly become identifiable because the internet's evolution has been expedited in this regard, meaning that people can see who has a community and who doesn't. And now all of these places with communities are the ones getting the big partnership brand deals for that exact reason, that we don't have to worry about this person getting let go from a major network and then people forgetting their name the next day.
Yeah.
Um, so I always focused on being like a personality and a community that could take my people anywhere. I have worked, if you look at my LinkedIn, I think I have like 15 companies and or networks
Yeah.
that I've worked for throughout my career. Some people would say, oh, he's just like, I don't want to say disloyal, but there's a reason why he hops between shops so much. The reason why I hop between shops so much is because I get a 1 year contract, like many talent usually do. I get a bigger offer from a different network the year after. Of course, I'm leaving to take, like, I'm not reliant on the network at all. I'm passionate about working with them and I like the people and they may like the brand, but, I'm a mercenary for hire. And if I get a bigger and better opportunity, I'm going to continue to hop from brand to brand or network to network because unless I'm at some place that I feel I want to be here and I'm willing to take a pay cut. How many times does that happen in professional
Right.
sports?
Yeah.
It's
Totally.
very far and few between. They always follow the money for the exact reason. So there are certainly some places that preach loyalty and being a company man. And I don't think there's anything right or wrong with that. It depends on who you are and what your life situation is. But as this solo act that continues to get bigger and better opportunities, yeah, I don't even think twice about leaving behind a network if I'm getting paid double from
Oh,
a future partner. So that's always my explanation for doing that. While I think there's some places that have their employees have been very loyal and or they have bosses who are like you're with us or against us type of mentalities. Networks, websites, just people in general, you name it. And they do that because it has worked out for them in those 20 years that they've been there, right? They've been able to
yeah.
continue to make more money at that same shop. And as a result, they want lieutenants that are able to continue to support that echo chamber and that lifestyle. So everyone's situation is different. There is no right or wrong answer. But for me, that's where I fell.
And what's cool is that like you can operate with the confidence that your audience will travel with you. That like, oh, well, I have to stay at whatever Spotify or The Ringer or ESPN or whatever they name your brand here because they're going to give me the largest audience and potential to grow that casual audience. But you have that core audience that to kind of take almost relatively full
Well,
circle that
well,
have
I'll
fans
tell
view.
you something. Sorry to cut you off now. I'll
Yeah.
tell you something. Because I've worked for so many networks now. These major executives that have been there a long time, they do not like talent that are self-aware, or at least they didn't. And what I mean by that is someone like myself who can identify, I don't need you, you need me.
Right.
Like that is not going to be a good employee, especially for a mindset of a vice president or like a co-founder or something of a smaller shop that they see that and they know, you'll leave at the first opportunity of either chance or ambition. And you're like, yeah, I thought I made that clear up front. I signed a contract. I'll be here for the entirety of it. But that there's this assumption that you're just going to be a good employee, a contracted employee, not even an employee, by the way. Some of these places you're mostly 1099s at. You're not even getting
Right.
employee benefits. So that there's this mindset that you're just going to fall into line and be a good soldier. They do not like the talent that has identified they have leverage. In my experience, there's talent that relies on the network. Otherwise, they're on the street.
Right.
But for me, and my mobility ability has certainly put me in the crosshairs of certain executives in the past that I've worked with. But I just don't know like what to do other than just be respectful and do my job.
Yeah.
So that's what I've always done. And as a result, I'm sure those people don't have the most sterling things to say about me, but they will say he was here the whole time and he worked and he just left.
Right.
And I'm absolutely willing to live with that if I know the next opportunity is going to compensate me for that type of relationship fallout.
Yeah, no, I mean, I had Dan Wetzel from Yahoo on recently, and he said something around like, what is your value over a replacement player? Like, if how easily can you be replaced? And if you can't be replaced, you look at like the standoff between Stephen A and ESPN. Like he's saying, "Good luck replacing me," and they're saying, "Well, okay, well maybe." And it's interesting to see that. So, like, you're able to say, "Hey, I have something that no that someone can't out easily replace me. I have an audience. I have a unique POV." That allows you to have that sort of autonomy and that confidence going into those situations.
Yeah, I've lived it, I've breathed it. It has its benefits, but you also better be damn good too if you're going to be one of those
Oh
you
yeah.
don't need me type of players, right? Even the Odell Beckhams in the past, like I don't need you, you need me, and then eventually Father Time catches up to him, and he has to become part of the system again. Then all those relationships that he may or may I'm this is unfair to Odell Beckham. He was just the first guy I thought of. Maybe like a Chad Ochocinco might be a better or Antonio Brown or something, be a better example, but that type of mentality, you better be good because those people will still be in the industry when you need to fall back in the line and being a good soldier, and they won't give you the opportunity. And I'm sure my reckoning in some of these places will come if it hasn't already behind the scenes. And yeah, that's like I'm there. But you could see how much gray hair I have in my head at this point in my career. I'm kind of like I told you, I'm very apathetic.
You've
Like
earned it.
I could retire tomorrow and just not care.
All those years of grinding, you earned it. Last thing Rob, before we get to this terrible stat, I can again, I keep you so much longer, but we haven't talked about enough yet. I guess just tell me about like we talked about this a little bit offline, just your view of the NBA right now, of who the NBA fan is, who the league wants the fan to be, how much they, I joked earlier that the off-court stuff is driving more engagement than the on-court stuff. Maybe that's evolving. Like, what is your POV and your role? And how does that affect how you're creating content, talking about the game? And what do you think ultimately is the best outcome for the future of the league, I guess, as well as the sport?
I think their ideal fan is young Gen Z international. So a 15-year-old kid from the south of France that's now like watching the NBA full time. I think the NBA has ambition to be as big, if not bigger, than the UEFA Champions League. They see the value in their international deals, especially the ones they have with like China and stuff. Those are worth more almost than the damn United States deals with NBC and Amazon. And
Right.
they have all of these network deals with these other countries. And you can tell the investment that they put in to NBA Africa, where they have been building these in a way basketball education facilities that have gotten these kids into the camps early where they're learning the game at the age of 13 and 14 in the event when they become 18 and they become draft eligible that they'll go to the NBA if they're qualified and they wouldn't have had that opportunity previously. Other places across the world, we see preseason games done in Dubai and Tokyo, and not saying the NFL doesn't go internationally because they just started the season in Sao Paulo, but they're a little bit later to the whole. Maybe we should start like figuring out our international business plan here because they have the United States already conquered, while
Right.
the NBA is very, very popular, even arguably more popular in other parts of the world than even in the country that they play in.
Yeah.
So that they're skewing towards a younger audience. I think they definitely appeal to like the 13 to 21 age group, which is quite young. So Steph Curry being a lot of people's heroes, LeBron's now at the tail end of his career, but these kids are growing up with John Morant. They are growing up with Anthony Edwards, and that's their version of Steph Curry now. That's how old we are. That Steph Curry is like a retired elder statesman.
Yeah.
So I think if I could picture a perfect NBA fan in the eyes of the NBA business, it would be a 15-year-old kid from a continent that is not North America. And no matter which way or who, what, when, where, why, of how they started watching the NBA doesn't really matter to them. But you can tell the NBA's focus is that particular mind that they want to invest in now so that 10 years down the road when they become adults in what we are as millennials now,
Mhm.
that that seed has been planted. They are not appealing to the baseball crowd like the north of 60 crowd, even an
Right.
NFL crowd. The Sunday afternoon I'm off work crowd. NBA doesn't, the business just doesn't work the same, and it has too many games.
Yeah.
Uh, NFL every week is a playoff game. That's just not the case in the NBA. And I guess that's what I'll just segue this final point to is that's one of the unfortunate parts about the NBA is a lot of people see the regular season as unnecessary and or just a money grab. And while I'm certainly leaning to that side of the courtroom, the reason they do it is because companies are willing to pay to broadcast it. So it's a moneymaker. It's opportunity for casual fans on a Tuesday night to go to a Chicago Bulls game because their company has tickets. You don't
Right.
have to be a diehard basketball fan and I'm coming to this game because now I'm going to watch the playoffs. No, they're just getting casual people through the door to enjoy a night out the same way that you go to a movie theater.
Yeah.
Like the NBA provides an entertainment options, even though in the big scheme of things for mainstream sports fans, they're not going to start paying attention until the NFL, the Super Bowl ends. Like that's usually when people start pivoting over to
Yeah.
NBA in the United States. So yeah, that's where the NBA business, it's a business is how I'm just going to end this point. The NBA is very much a business. They can do more things to make it ideal to its diehards, but they don't because they are in the business of making money. As David Stern once said, if you're looking for UNICEF, it's down the street.
Love that. Great place to end and cap it off. We're going to have some fun with you coming up in our catch and shoot segment. First episode shareable stat coming at you right now. Awesome stuff. Being able to talk to Worldwide Rob Perez. Just so much good information, so much good insight. He gets it so much. Stick around because you're going to hear some more good stuff from him with our quick hitting question segment. But first, episode's shareable stat. And this episode's shareable stat has to do with, well, the NBA, of course. Why wouldn't it for this special episode? And the shareable stat looks at the performance of Bose, the audio brand, looks at the performance of their ads. They looked at the average of Bose's brand ads compared to when they had an ad that involved Timberwolves superstar Anthony Edwards. When Anthony Edwards was in an ad, it was 1,230% more effective than their brand average. That is just astounding. Over 1,200% more effective when Anthony Edwards was in the ad. How can you do? What can you do with that information? What can you do with it with your own strategy? Well, how much do you know about which players are driving your performance with your organic content or your promotional content? Yes, it's kind of obvious oftentimes the superstar players are going to drive more and more engagement and be more effective, but how can you also measure that over time? There are so many variables that go into the performance of organic content. Certainly, wins and losses, how a team is performing, what kind of content is it? Is it photo or video? What platform is it on? There are so many variables that you can try to keep track of, but is a player's presence also something that you are keeping track of as well? Are you marking down in your spreadsheets, in your reports, which players are present in a given graphic, in a given hype video, in a given video? In a given ad, certainly as well, as you look to optimize the performance of not just your ads, but when you have sponsored content as well, and trying to look at what's happening over time. Certainly, I'm sure the Anthony Edwards stat would not be quite as high as it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, as it is now that he is a true superstar by all accounts. So super interesting stat to think about. Ponder it, take some action on it, start to look at the granularity of players that are involved in your content, other variables that may change and evolve over time that can affect your strategy. So again, that stat, which is just eminently shareable, 1,236%. When Bose ads contain Anthony Edwards, it's over 1,200% more effective compared to the brand's average. More importantly, stick around because lots more good stuff here with Rob Perez, better known as Worldwide Wob. Right back from this episode's shareable stat, and I'm joined once again by Rob Perez, aka Worldwide Wob. We learned so much from him in the interview process. Are you now ready for a little catch and shoot?
Let's do it.
I didn't ask you about how your game is. Maybe I'll throw in one of those questions about how likely you are to make that shot if I pass you one for a.
Yeah, I'd say these answers are going to be very. If the segment is called JR or catch and shoot, I just give away the answer. But I'm going to be like J.R. Smith with these and just get them up. If they go in, they go in.
All right, number one for you. Tell me the lesson that sticks with you from starting and running a business, and also the lesson or principle that really is maybe your main mantra, your main principle that you carry as a content creator.
Say it again. Stay in front of technology because if you don't, technology will run laps around you and it'll be too late. That's where the money goes. That's where the audience goes. I know people don't like artificial intelligence right now, and you just be aware of it. and cognizant, because that's certainly, I think, where a lot of content and or these network businesses are going to start streamlining too.
Mhm.
And they're doing it in ways that you don't even know about yet. So while you may not be a fan of it, and I'm certainly not in some cases, just be aware that you need to be there when technology stomps its feet.
Hell yeah. No, especially as you and I have both aged over the years, like my own personal mantra is like run toward things that intimidate you or scare you. Like, if you don't understand something, don't run away from it. Don't resist it. Like, go toward it. I mean, something is something you should understand. So I love that mantra. Uh,
Absolutely.
Number two for you, tell me the most viral tweet or piece of content from your career so far. If you can remember, is there one that just blew up more than any other?
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, it's a combination of, because I was going to say it's got to be like a highlight of some kind, because those NBA clips when Anthony Edwards like dunks on people, those just
Yeah.
get millions and millions, and I think one of them's even done close to 100,000 retweets in the past. But I would say confidently that when I do my season recap supercut videos, the one I did for the 2020 season when COVID stopped it,
Mhm.
that one to this day is probably my most retweeted and liked piece of original content ever. And it's not even close. I mean, every single person on the platform was engaging with that. It started with Mark
Oh yeah.
Cuban and people outside the industry, major celebrities and stuff were like, because that whole season was a Hollywood movie,
Right.
both with great things and terrible things. And that was also the Kobe Bryant death season too. So all of the various events that occurred in that one year created an opportunity for me to make just the most heartstring pulling trailer slash recap video possible. And yeah, that did some major numbers. There's some WAP investigations do big numbers too, but I
Yeah.
would say the 2020 season recap where they finished in the bubble was number one.
It's pretty cool too. That's something that like it wasn't just like some throwaway clip that just happened to be at the right place at the right time. Like something that you worked on, that you put together, and a cinematic masterpiece.
Those take weeks to make, weeks of 8 hour days.
And it
So
might have paid off.
yeah,
All right, the next one for you. This may be that fateful Mavs game that set it all off from the start of your businesses. But tell me the most memorable NBA game for whatever reason. It can be whatever. It could be an incredible game. It could be a life changing thing. Just something crazy that happened in the game. The most memorable NBA game for whatever reason for you.
for me personally,
Yeah.
okay, well, the answer is Reggie Miller's 8 points in 9 seconds because I was at the game.
Oh
My
shit.
dad worked. My dad worked for NBC Sports at the time as a salesman, so we had tickets to the game, and he wanted to beat the traffic, so we left with 10 seconds to go, and
Oh
then
gosh.
I there was no social media, there was no there were no smartphones. We hear in a cab on the way to Grand Central that the Pacers had pulled off this
Oh.
historic comeback. I remember throwing the biggest tantrum in the world and being like, this is what we get for leaving games early. You always want to beat the traffic. You always want to do it. And I just like laid into it. I go, oh, I will never, even when I have a kid, I will never leave a game early because the shit that you pulled today. And it still haunts him. I hope he's not listening to this because it's like his number one. Like if you bring it up, it just destroys him. Um, but yeah, I didn't get to see that happen live. Maybe it was for the best because I'm a Knicks fan, but to this day, I feel like it happened because my dad had to leave early again. He was always the let's beat the traffic guy.
Yeah.
We left that World Series at Yankee Stadium when the Yankees hit a homer off Young Kim and game one against the
Yeah.
Arizona Diamondbacks.
Remember
We
that.
had to beat the traffic for that one too. So like it always drove me mad. And that NBA game still is discussed to this day.
If you take away one lesson from this podcast among the many, stay till the end of the damn game.
It's not worth it. It's not worth the 30 minutes that you're going to save beating everyone out the parking lot.
Oh, so great. Number four for you. Tell me, besides any social media or messaging communications apps, tell me the app that's most valuable for your work, for your job. What are you spending the time? It could be a mobile or web app.
Mobile or a web app.
Yeah, besides
Um,
obvious, like don't say like whatever Slack or Twitter or email.
oh, so the answer's got to be I use what was once known as Sportacular. The app has become Yahoo Sports. because I think they acquired it several years ago. But I mean, that app, how much I use that on a daily basis, it's the best. It is by far the best UX. The accessibility of clicking around, obviously getting scores. It just makes it so easy. If I need to look up a stat too, some of these sites, the way that they do their box scores, they leave out the plus minus, or like
Yeah.
Yahoo Sports has, for every single sport, has the most perfect box scores, easiest way to click around, never glitches. It's on time. Again, you can tell the answers are always revolve around simplicity.
Yeah.
And I would say the Yahoo Sports app is, if I looked up my app usage, is easily the number two app behind, or number three behind Hinge and Twitter.
I like it. No, that's a great answer. And I can totally relate too. Like if I'm going to check a score, I don't go for one of the clunky apps where I can also get like a million streams because those take forever to load. And it's like,
Oh my God, the ESPN app, bro. Like if you're trying to get a score, you load the ESPN app. You have to go through an ad. First of all,
yep.
it's going to give you like ESPN Bet or Disney Plus. Then it has 5 videos that autoplay before you can either get to the bottom of what you're looking for, or you have to click a certain tab to get to the scores. Then you got to sort the sport. It's
Yep.
7 clicks. Have you not learned anything from listening to this podcast now, an hour in, that simplicity matters? And Yahoo Sports, you can get anything you need in 2 or less clicks. Simplicity.
Oh yeah.
I'm telling you, it matters.
I love it. The folks at Yahoo will like that as well. All right, next up for you. This one I'm interested to hear your answer. We alluded to it a little bit. If Twitter went away tomorrow, and it almost did, of course, a few years ago, or when Elon came aboard, tell us, like which platform would you prioritize? And also as a bonus question to that, tell me about the Twitter profile pic or pics.
What platform would I utilize? The platform sticking out over Joshua Tree, because I would be off social media and forever. It's Twitter or bust for me.
Yeah.
It's always been Twitter or bust. If Twitter ever died, I'm out of here. Like I am not going over to Threads or Blue Sky. I mean, I'll probably use it as a daily news aggregation source where I'll follow like I'm a news junkie, so I watch like ABC Nightly News every night, BBC World News stuff. I would just
Yeah.
use them as my newspaper, but other than that, I wouldn't be creating content and or uh, following Twitter and all these like
Right.
viral tweets and stuff the way that I currently am, because I'm on there so much. But oh yeah, it's a wrap if Twitter dies for sure.
Wow. That's
Oh,
a
and you asked about the profile picture.
yeah.
So the profile, I've only had 2 profile pictures in my entire life. The first of which was David Stern, and then when David Stern retired, I went dark on the account for 3 days, and on the third day, Adam Silver rose again, and it's that picture of Adam Silver with a Terminator face, meaning he can't be killed because he's Adam Silver. He just gets through everything. He's resilient. And he's in a Darth Sidious from Star Wars snuggie, Emperor Palpatine hoodie, if you will.
Yeah.
Um, so the reason for that is because during the lockout, David Stern, of course, was the face of the NBA side, but it was Adam Silver who was in the litigation room, like doing all of the I don't even know what the appropriate legal term is, but
Like
he was the henchman. Okay. So he has always, like Palpatine, Adam Silver, to his credit. If anyone from the NBA is listening to this, I love Adam Silver. We went to the same high school and he lived down the street. So like Rye Garnet's forever. But he's a very, very smart businessman, and he gets what he wants.
yeah.
And it could be ruthless behind the scenes, the same way that Palpatine was. And then he goes in front of the Senate and he gets a massive ovation, right? He's not shooting lightning bolts out of his fingertips, but that's like the theme of the picture is he can't be killed. He's the face of the NBA. He's been the face of my Twitter account. And I've always just marveled at his ability to put on this people's champion front while putting in the amount of work, if you will, he does behind the scenes that certainly is dragging some dead bodies around, figuratively speaking.
Right. No, really, really thoughtful, really really smart response there and story behind that. I like that. All right, I would have multiple people that would bug me if I didn't ask about this. So talk about the origins and engagement with the birds in the air, with how that came about, how and just your overall experience with it.
Yeah, so I moved to Los Angeles in 2012 as a part of Crowd Seats, building that business with my partner who lived here, and I had never been to Los Angeles in my life. And when you live in Los Angeles long enough, if you have the news on any channel, give it less than 5 days, and your news and or whatever you're watching on said news channel, it could be the local NBC affiliate, it's going to be cut at, like how they do like a special report and they break
Right,
in with news. You will be broken in with a police chase with it, guaranteed. I'm not even exaggerating. It'll just take a couple of days. There will be a police chase on that channel at some point, and then you'll watch enough of them, and I'm like, these are really entertaining. Of course, I was alive for OJ, and that was
right,
during the NBA Finals
right,
with the
yeah.
Knicks and Rockets. So, yeah, that was a major cultural moment in Los Angeles. It's You go to a bar sometimes, and they'll turn the game off to put the police chase on. It's just ingrained in the culture here, and there's so many people that are watching it, and the viewership is so high. That's the reason for them continuing to override all original programming to show you police chases, because it's what people want to watch. And after so many years of watching it, when Periscope became a thing in 2015, I started broadcasting the chases live on my channel with my commentary, because Periscope, it was just me putting the phone in front of the
Right.
television.
I
And then
watched
you
them.
could hear me like on the couch yelling as this was all going on. And over time, it created this very large community, and arguably even larger community than what I have with the NBA, of very loyal police chase followers that have my notifications turned on Twitch, where I broadcast the chases now. Um, but yeah, that's how it all started. And at this point, I've covered thousands of police chases, thousands, not exaggerating. And anytime that they're live, if I'm around, I'm going to broadcast it.
Oh yeah.
And once again, I do it because so many people um, have been with me since day one of doing it, that it just wouldn't be right if I stopped. The day comes, you asked about if Twitter fell apart, what would happen? I wouldn't be on another social media platform, but I would still do police chases on Twitch. Twitch
Yeah.
is by far the best social media network for live content. It's got the best tools, best way to monetize, all the above. So I would definitely still continue that kind of stuff, because I'm going to be doing it in my own place anyway. And I might as well just, click a button and go live like I have throughout my life.
So great. And I just love the fact that like the most famous police chase in history coincides or intersects with your NBA passion as well.
All roads, right? All roads lead to one thing or another. And yeah, while that day wasn't like, ooh, I love police chases
right.
now. It just, I was a kid, but I was old enough to know what was going on. And when you move to Los Angeles and you realize how many of these things happen on a daily basis and how many end up making the news, that it's kind of I'm still to this day in awe of how popular these things are. Neil, if you go to an ABC7 live stream on YouTube of a 30 to 40-minute chase, they have over 1 million views. Most of those are live. In the concurrence, they sometimes will have 100,000 concurrents. These are bigger than Mr. Beast numbers. These are like top content creator on earth numbers of concurrent viewership watching a police chase. And it could be a normal police chase too. If it's more exciting, of course, it's going to draw more viewers the longer it goes. But these do unspeakable audience numbers in comparison to my NBA stuff. It's 3 times the viewership and the demand too. Like my Twitch, for example, I only have 25,000 followers, but I have more than 50% of them have alerts on. I can see on the channel analytics and how many concurrents I get in a room at any time in the day, unless there's some major NBA event like a trade deadline blockbuster. Like a basic police chase will run laps around NBA content. Like I've pitched NBA concepts to some very very high, yeah, police chase live concepts to high level executives at networks that are still trying to figure out how they can do simulcasting with the rights to broadcast it, not get their talent canceled, for in the event someone dies during one of these things, because that's a very, very possible thing that can happen. But the audience is there and everyone loves it. So it's like whoever figures this out on a big scale like that is gonna find gold.
What a phenomenon. That's so cool. Now my head's turning with how do we build an app around this or some sort of business scheme? Just really fun stuff.
Yeah.
Next one for you. Tell me the NBA player whose social media you most enjoyed and why. He doesn't have to be active, current or former NBA player whose social media you most enjoyed.
Well, the answer for me is Joel Embiid. He doesn't tweet as much anymore.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's very smart. I mean, I know him. I don't want to say I know him personally because that would imply we're like friends who chat and talk because we don't, but we know of each other. We've collaborated on camera, off camera for certain things. This guy is very, very smart. He has never once tweeted or published anything without an agenda and or cogni cognizant what's cognitive awareness. I think that's the proper medical term of exactly what he's doing. Okay, everything has a purpose, and whether he's trolling, he's just having fun, the timing of his tweets, he's someone who gets it. And unfortunately, most people on the internet are not very smart. So they will just read everything literally that is said, whether it's from Joel Embiid or anyone, and have no open mind to objectivity in the interpretation of what was published. And Joel Embiid knows this, understands it, and he preys on it for his own personal joy, or at least that he did before he had a kid. So
Right.
when he was in his prime doing those things, that was like a fisherman can always spot another fisherman is the famous saying, at the other end of the canal. And Joel Embiid is certainly another fisherman because he's someone who gets it, and they are far and few between.
Hell yeah. Troy Embiid for life. Gotta love it. Next up for you, almost done here. We got to ask our food question. We always got the food question. This is gonna be a two-parter for you, a little bit of bonus. First, if I come there in LA and we hang out, what's the best meal to get in the city, and where do we get it? And then a little bonus question for you. And those latest of late night NBA games, what are you eating or drinking, if anything?
Okay, so best restaurant in LA. Well, I mean, I'm a big Mexican food proponent. You go to any food truck outside of I don't know, Venice food trucks or anything that's near a construction site, like those are the most authentic, best foods ever. Um, because I mean, it's authentic. It's from Mexico. In regards to a particular place, I don't go. I'm not much of a foodie because I like volume. I need a lot of food, okay? And if I go to some fancy little place that squirts some sauce on a piece of meat and I'm done with it in 2 bites, it's got a Michelin star on it because it tastes so good. I'm like, all right, that tasted great. It cost me $100, and I'm still hungry.
Totally with you.
I don't consider those places, despite being Michelin star ratings, to be good because the only way I am satisfied is if I'm full.
Yeah.
So as a result, I need to go somewhere that can fulfill that lust for my hangriness. There's a place on the west side that I go often called Bell's Beach House. Another one in Santa Monica called Elefante, and I would say it's the perfect combination of. And put it this way: the best places to take a date are the places I'm probably going to recommend. Meaning, there's good food, there's good vibes. It's a loungy type feel. And while it's not Michelin 5-star food, it's good enough that you walk out of there satisfied and you didn't pay $200 for a squirt.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's an appropriate answer here. Mexican food, obviously, it's the same shit. It's beans, rice, cheese, chicken, beef. It just done in different ways. Okay. Tortillas, taco shells. It's all the same ingredients. That's why I like it so much because you can just eat it and eat it and eat it until you're no longer hungry.
No, that's like the joke with Taco Bell is that they just keep on finding different ways to combine the same like 4 or 5 ingredients all the time. I like it. All right,
Yeah.
come almost done here. We're at number 9. Tell me the emerging social media behavior or media consumption behavior or emerging tech, just any sort of this emerging stuff, tech behavior that you're most optimistic about for the future and why.
Emerging tech. Um,
So something that you're seeing that different way people are consuming things, different technologies out there. You talk about AI.
yeah, I'm a huge proponent of live, do everything live. I think there's a certain intrigue to creators that are live. And I can tell by this because every time I do something like the comments are, is this live? Is this live when it says live in the fucking chat or it says live in the fucking title? It drives me nuts. But people are just obsessed with something being live because they know there's always this chance of randomness to occur,
Yeah.
whether it's positive or negative. I don't know if people like polished products as much anymore unless it's in long form. Um, and it's got like movie quality. There's just something raw about live. So the ability to go live is so easy now. It doesn't even matter what platform you're putting it on because every single one has an option for you. But seeing how live continues to evolve and which places are make it easier to access and or offer different tools to make it intriguing. I think once again, Twitch is the best at it. But YouTube's certainly gotten better over time. Their live product and ability to discover the evolution of the live category for me is probably the answer.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. It's that the ability to have that sort of communal viewing experience. I know that someone's watching this and consuming this at the same time that I am, and also to your point, like that you know that this is real, that this is not manipulated in any way, this is not some produced shit, that I can trust what I'm seeing in theory, because it's happening in real time.
Yeah, yeah, it's that genuine again that rawness to it, and the potential of human error as well with live. Something can go wrong. People like seeing stuff go wrong, whether it influences the stream or not. That there's a relatability to struggling with something live because most people are the same way. And what are these polished products? Not necessarily get exposed, but are made real a lot quicker than they so think. When that red light is rolling and there is no pause button, you know, you can
Cool.
kill the stream, but there is no pausing live.
Totally. Last one for you, Rob. Maybe the hardest question I'm going to ask you on the entire podcast today. Which happens first? Will the Knicks win an NBA title, or the Knicks will have a first overall draft pick? What's going to happen next?
Well, they're kind of good now, which is a surprise. Because they're kind of good, I don't think they'll be getting a first round pick anytime soon. And I would probably put them in the upper echelon of teams in the Eastern Conference with the 76ers
Yep.
and the Celtics. And who else am I missing? And there's someone else probably, but yeah, I think they might actually have a chance at making a finals in the next 5 years with the team they've assembled. It's been a very long time since I could confidently say that. Even the Carmelo Anthony team that finished second in the East, the whole world knew there's not a chance they were beating the Miami Heat, the big three and the Heatles. I think it was the 90s was the last time that I felt like I was rooting for a team that had a legitimate chance at winning a title. And that was several years. The 99 team, the 8 seed to make the finals against the Spurs was just a complete miracle. No
Yeah.
one ever thought that team was going to actually compete. But, and the Spurs proved that. But ever since then, it's now been 25 years. And for the first time in 25 years, I can confidently say the Knicks are one of 10 teams which can legitimately win an NBA title if the stars align. So as a result,
I love it.
context of that, unbiased, certainly unbiased, because I'm always like the Knicks stink. I'm realist in the world that, yeah, now is the time. I think that they have a chance to legitimately win a title. So I will go with that one.
Do your live streams, like after Knicks games, do they do better when the team is playing well and they had a win, or they do better when people just want to watch you suffer?
They do better with Knicks fans when they win. They do better with NBA fans when they lose, for sure.
Interesting
As
perspective.
long as it's dramatic, right? Boring doesn't sell. If it's a 40-point blowout on a Wednesday night against the Wizards, win or lose, that video is not going to do numbers. But if they have a dramatic, like blown lead and I'm sitting there all cranky, like those fans are going to come in. They're like, oh, I've been waiting for this.
Uh,
Like, or if the Knicks have a great win, all the Knicks fans, they pile in there like, we're going to win the championship.
right.
So it's got to be an end of the extreme, I would say, for its most popular viewership.
So great. All right, Rob, you switched. You made a bunch of the catch and shoots. Kicked ass. Now your chance to take over the podcast and tell us your social media all-star fall. It can be anyone, a reporter, a friend, someone that you just think is funny. Just tell us who they are and why they're following.
Um, I mean, the NBA is just too obvious. Anyone listening to this point is going to know the names I'm going to say with all my friends in the industry. So why don't I give an outside the box one?
Yeah.
Since I'm a huge history buff, my followers know me. I give a World War II fact of the day when I was doing my Radio Roulette show. There's a World War I account on YouTube called The Great War. They do 10-minute episodes of every week during World War I. It is highly produced. It has footage. It has an incredibly knowledgeable host. And if you have ever wanted a history lesson in congestible form, you can watch it while you're on the toilet. I usually watch an episode to put me to sleep because they're just 10 minutes long and you get through that week's episode. You do the next one the next day. The Great War is the YouTube channel. Very digestible history content. I think anyone that has a relative interest in history will enjoy the presentation, research, and production and effort of this channel, period.
Like that. Oh, that's great. As someone who gets sucked into a lot of history videos on TikTok, that's something I will have to check out as well. For sure. And how about you, Robert? Where do you want to? I think anyone listening to this podcast knows how to find you on Twitter at Worldwide Wild, but anywhere else that you want to point people to find your work, SiriusXM, So Rare, this is your chance to tell us where to find you.
Yeah. Nothing incredibly official yet. I think the plan is to continue partnerships and collaborations with my previous partners. So whether that's SiriusXM, Sorare, NBA, they would be worthy of getting me advocating for them, whether I continue work with them or not. But I would look forward to those two for sure.
Fantastic stuff. And cannot thank you enough for coming on the podcast today, sharing us your wisdom, your insight. You have just been such a shining light in this industry and are setting a good example for others, and just really awesome stuff today. And thank you again for coming on the pod.
You got it, my friend.
Thanks so much again to Rob Perez, Worldwide Wob. Just tremendous stuff. I was so elated to be able to speak with him, and he was just so awesome, very approachable, very down to earth, extremely intelligent. There's a reason why he has had all success. It is not by accident. It's been very intentional throughout. Learn the lessons from him, evolve with technology, keep up with what's latest and greatest, try new things, understand your audience, understand the platforms. Just tremendous stuff from Rob, and we cannot thank him enough for coming on the podcast today. And we look forward to following along throughout the NBA season and beyond, and following all of his content and continuing to learn from him. Well, that'll do it for this episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Thanks again for listening. As always, I'm your host, Neil Hurwitz. Hit me up on LinkedIn, also on Twitter, NJH287. Visit the website, dsmsports.net, also Slyke, SLYKE.co, and of course, subscribe, follow along to the podcast on whichever podcast platform is your favorite. Until next time, this is Neil Horwitz signing off for the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.